The Annus Mirabilis papers, from Latin Annus Mirabilis, miracle year, are the 4 papers that Albert Einstein published in Annalen der Physik, Annals of Physics, a scientific journal in 1905. These 4 papers were major contributions to the foundation of modern physics. They revolutionized science's understanding of the fundamental concepts of space, time, mass, and energy. Because Einstein published these remarkable papers in a single year, 1905 is called his Annus Mirabilis, or Miracle Year in English, or Wunderjahr in German. The first paper explained the photoelectric effect, which established the energy of the light quanta E equals hf. The second paper explained Brownian motion, which established the Einstein relation, where D representative of the solubility of a gas or liquid in a container frame of solute molecule accumulation, equal to unit of measurement representative of the mobility in the frame. Kb is the kinetic energy, or K, representative of the particles in the frame and the thermodynamic temperature. T is the thermal of the absolute temperature of, as example, absolute zero, and of hot and cold thresholds of thermodynamics. The third paper introduced Einstein's theory of special relativity, which established the universal constant speed of light, c equals constant. The fourth, a consequence of the theory of special relativity, developed the principle of mass-energy equivalence, expressed in the famous equation E equals mc squared, and which led to the discovery of use of atomic energy, and hence that of the subatomic particle and constituent of the elementary of the holism of a subatomic particle. What does E equals hf mean in physics? Einstein explained the phenomena of photoelectric effect and gave the equation E equals hf, in which E stands for energy of the photon, h stands for Planck's constant, and f stands for frequency. Thus, E gives the information of energy associated with a certain frequency, f. Planck's constant, symbolized as h, is a fundamental universal constant that defines the quantum nature of energy and relates the energy of a photon to its frequency. In the International System of Units, also known as SI, the constant value is 6.62607.015 by 10 to the power of 34 joule hertz to the power of -1, or joule seconds. Photoelectric effect. The photoelectric effect is the emission of electrons when electromagnetic radiation, such as light, hits a material. Electrons emitted in this manner are called photoelectrons. For further reference to do of hydrogen, in the photoelectric effect, incoming light causes an atom to eject an electron. We consider the simplest possible scenario that the atom is hydrogen in its ground state. For further reference, consider photoluminescence, photon absorption, and optogenetics as light spectrum membranes, preset of programmed information packets and virtually projected. What did Einstein prove in his 1905 paper? In 1905, the wave nature of light was an established, uncontrovertible fact. In the face of this universally held knowledge, Einstein proposed that light was not a continuous wave, but consisted of localized particles, and thus of that of an incontrovertible fact, and that of a universally held knowledge, quote unquote. The cognitive dissonance is evident subtly, but quite apparently. For would you say you are set in your ways? If you say that someone is set in their ways, you mean that they have been behaving in the same way for many years and do not want to change. As example, he was too set in his ways to make any real changes, and unwilling to change one's habits, behaviorism opinions, etc. For further reference, a commonality instilled over duration, applied repetitively, acclimatized as a new normalities, hence that of a metamorphism to do of such behavioral attitude and personification, and thus a anthropomorphism, set in ways, cognitive sensory acknowledgement and routine distilled as a conventional psychological installment over duration. What is furthermore evident of the precognitive conventional stringency. The black body radiator used in Karlo laboratory in Poland. It is an approximation of a model described by Planck's law, utilized as a spectral irradiance standard. The black body is an idealized physical body that absorbs all incident of electromagnetic radiation, regardless of frequency or angle of incidence. The name black body is given because it absorbs all colors of light. A black body also emits black body radiation. In contrast, a white body is one with a rough surface that reflects all incident rays completely and uniformly in all directions. For further reference, consider that of chlorinated gaseous compounds, nanogel osmosis, and photoelectric electromagnetic exposure, to that of hydrogenics, so to do with that of liquid hydrogen and gaseous hydrogen of compounds, and that of a brine substances, to do with that of recombinated enzymes, of artificial inorganic manipulation, splicing, and to do of that of PET gene cloning. Considering that of the human eyeball vision and that of the spectrums of analysis, to do with that of radio waves, microwaves, infrared, ultraviolet, X-rays, gamma rays, to that of what studied as visible light, and that of the occurrence of narrow and broad bands of visional waves and wavelength in nanometers displayed and illustrated on the screen, is an example of that of a photonic, hydrogenic, hydromancy, biohacking feasibility via perspiration absorption, and so to do of hydrogenesis, to do with hydrogen liquid and hydrogen gaseous formation, to do with that of a filtration of pH of soil as example, to do of periodic table mapping and filtration, distillery, contamination, and a osmosis. It is evident of that of the chlorinated water, eye exposure as example of chlorine in water of swimming pools, to do of rainbow colorations and combinations of meta mapping. What was Einstein's second paper about? The second paper focuses on Brownian motion, the erratic random movement of microscopic particles in a fluid as they collide. This paper helped to move the theory of atoms into reality by offering a way for scientists to count and observe their behavior during experiments. Molecular diffusion. From a microscopic and macroscopic point of view, initially there are i.e. solutions, of molecules on the left side of the barrier, emphasized of the purple line of the illustration, and none on the right. The barrier is removed and the solute diffuses to fill the whole container. Top. A single molecule moves around randomly. Middle. With more molecules there is a clear trend where the solute fills the container more and more uniformly. Bottom. With an enormous number of solute molecules, randomness becomes undetectable. The solute appears to move smoothly and systematically from high concentration areas to low concentration areas. This smooth flow is described by Fick's laws. Brownian motion, or pedesis, from ancient Greek meaning leaping, is the random motion of particles suspended in a medium, a liquid or a gas. Simulation of the Brownian motion of a large particle, analogous to a dust particle. As example, emphasized simulation of the Brownian motion of a large particle, analogous to a dust particle that collides with a large set of smaller particles, analogous to molecules of a gas which move with different velocities in different random directions, as example of the illustration displayed. Having dimensions of energy per degree of temperature, the Boltzmann constant has a defined value of 1.380649 by 10 to the power of 23 joule per Kelvin, or K. The example of globular clusters of emphasis as an example of the illustration, as though blobs moving through a clotted artery as example, or blobs moving through a catalyst of frame and collecting and accumulating particles whilst traversing two of that of, as example, Brownian motion. To further emphasize, what does U stand for? U in mathematical symbology is that of representative to the word micro. The letter U is a symbol for the scientific prefix micro, which indicates 1/1,000,000th of a unit of measure. This is quite appropriate for microbiology, also known as eubiology, as the size of the organisms we study are on the order of 1 also known as micron, a millionth of a meter, or smaller. Special relativity was originally proposed by Albert Einstein in a paper published on 26 September 1905 titled On the Electrodynamics of Moving Bodies. The incompatibility of Newtonian mechanics with Maxwell's equations of electromagnetism and experimentally the Michelson-Morley null result and subsequent similar experiments demonstrated that the historical hypothesized luminiferous ether did not exist. This led to Einstein's development of special relativity, which corrects mechanics to handle situations involving all motions, and especially those at a speed close to that of light, known as relativistic velocities. Special relativity has a wide range of consequences that have been experimentally verified. They include the relativity of simultaneity, length contraction, time dilation, the relativistic velocity addition formula, the relativistic Doppler effect, relativistic mass, a universal speed limit, mass energy equivalence, the speed of causality, and the Thomas precession. It has, for example, replaced the conventional notion of an absolute universal time with the notion of a time that is dependent on reference frame and spatial precision, rather than an invariant time interval between two events. There is an invariant space-time interval. Combined with other laws of physics, the two postulates of special relativity predict the equivalence of mass and energy as expressed in the mass-energy equivalence formula E equals mc squared, where c is the speed of light in vacuum. It also explains how the phenomena of electricity and magnetism are related. The formula defines the energy E of a particle in its rest frame as the product of mass m with the speed of light squared c squared. Because the speed of light is a large number in everyday units, approximately 300,000 kilometers per second or 186,000 miles per second, the formula implies that a small amount of rest mass measured when the system is at rest corresponds to an enormous amount of energy which is independent of the composition of the matter. E equals mc squared disputed. 0 minus 1 equals minus 1. F force equals m mass. A acceleration. Plus minus pi. T pendulum null value non-binary equivalence binary equals convergence configuration 6 9, and so hence neutralization of the three-part increment of positive, negative, neutral to a neutral state.
Automated spell check, capital G, question why.
What up, big G? Is there a little G? My automated spell check says otherwise. What up, dog? The OD big G, brah, huh? Pertains to a lower and a higher pendulum paradigms of name, title, and label, akin to a decentralized individual threatening computes, directing, usurping, dominating, megalomaniac, vicious fiat monopolies of pseudonym economies, presuming over all neurons in brains and synapses, as computed oneness, monotheism, dystopia, utopia, and fiat currency, and generic occultism, entity, derivative, catalysts, directorates of
fiat economies,
of Stockholm, boiling frog, denial, belief, and victimization, and autistic spectrums of Down syndromes, neural inducement of psychedelic LSD, DMT, chemical sterilization and weaponization, as a xenophobic charlatan citing external spaces as viral epidemics. What's the denomination and calculus of such scenario?